All right, welcome back to another episode here of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool.
Sean. We're getting into episode 21.
Yep.
And we're going to continue. We left off on previous chapter 7, so we were getting into probably about halfway, a little over halfway.
Yeah, we're talking about intensification, chapter 7 in breakthrough advertising. He has about 13 different points that he goes through, and we got through 7 of them. So we're picking up at number 8 here. But before we dive into that, we have some high gravity beer.
Ooh, man,
to talk about.
You're not kidding
today. So this is one of my favorites. Well, I say it is. So the last time I had it, it was actually called Old Stock Ale 2017. So they must change the year every year. And I don't know if that affects the flavor or not. I would think they'd keep the formula the same. The label's the same, other than the number. It is 12% alcohol.
That's
by
probably
volume.
the highest ABV that we've had on.
Yeah, you can only find it at a liquor store. They won't. Yeah. They here in Tennessee anyway. They're not allowed to sell it in like grocery stores or even beer stores. It's got to be a liquor store that carries it. So it's packs a punch. But I'll let you.
Yeah, I'm gonna try
it here. So it's definitely a lighter. It's not our typical dark beer. It's more of an ale.
By the way, if you hear some parakeets in the background, those are my son's birds. They like to chime in every now and then.
They're right off camera over here if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah. Apparently, they're not a big fan of us partaking in this
us chirping. So this has got a different taste than like the stouts and things like that.
That is different.
It's kind of almost like a creamy, like a cream soda. It's probably the closest thing I could.
I probably should have had a seltzer before I switched over. I think this is good, but it's just I just got a weird taste on my first sip. I'm sure it'll
plus
change.
You had the cookie.
Yeah, well, that's true.
I brought some leftover Christmas cookies that have been in the freezer, kind of a ginger molasses cookie. Those were really good. But yeah, this to me, it's got almost like a cream soda type flavor to it, and then it just kind of turns into just kind of an ale. They don't. I don't think they put any like flavors in it. It's just more of an ale, straight ale.
I like it,
but you'll notice it in a few minutes.
Yeah,
or when you stand up at the end of this podcast.
Yeah. Which we won't on camera. After 12%. No, this is good. I like it. But I don't taste the cream.
That could just be me.
It could be.
Could be my weird taste.
I'm trying to pinpoint what exactly I'm tasting. I like it, but I'm trying to kind of classify it, and I can't.
Yeah. Oh. Just keep sipping.
I'll
do most of the talking. You keep sipping.
Yeah, you just keep talking there. I'll have this beer.
Yeah, so we've been talking about intensification, which is, I said on the last episode, well, Eugene Schwartz said it, I just read it. He said, advertising is the literature of desire. It is society's encyclopedia of dreams, our 20th century wish book. He says the art of salesmanship fundamentally and primarily is expanding desire, expanding it horizontally among more and more people, expanding it vertically by sharpening and magnifying it, by building it to such a pitch that it overcomes the obstacles of skepticism, lethargy, and price and results in the sale. So that's when he talks about intensification. We've talked numerous times on this podcast that you don't create desire. You only tap into it and then intensify it and link it to your product or service.
Yep.
So how do you do that? And how do you make sure that you do it in such a way that they can't say no? And that's really what he's talking about when he talks about intensification. So we've already talked about 7 ways, and you can go back to listen to episode 20 if you want to hear those. And we're going to dive in with 8 through 13, and then we'll wrap up with that chapter. And then we've got a cool short little podcast coming up for episode 22 that you'll want to find out more about. We'll tell you. We'll tease that at the end.
Yeah.
So number 8 is compare, contrast, and prove superiority.
This is really important because you're always, as we said, if you're getting into a competitive market or, depending on what your market is, what the competition looks like, people want to know how your product performs against, similar products.
I would imagine you get this a lot in your business.
Yeah, definitely. And so people want to see, video is always a great way. And, we have a lot of it today. We have access to using video to compare. And so if you can see it, seeing's believing. But yeah, if you can paint those pictures and words, showing just the contrast between what your product does against this product, and you see it time and time again. We've talked about infomercials. They do a fantastic job of this. If you watch some of the videos and the way they contrast the product they're advertising against some of these failed products on the other side that don't perform as well.
And I'll make this note. He doesn't really talk about this here, but it's something that I've done in the past. So when you compare, sometimes you can compare to, you may do something as well as a really well-known brand. So let me give you an example. I had my B2B client that I had for several years that I worked with. They were an online retailer, so they shipped everything out. So they judged their standards by this, I can't remember what it's called, but there's a warehousing shipping standard that's just kind of an industry-wide standard for anybody that ships packages. So Amazon, Walmart, all these big companies use this standard.
Right.
And it's a very specific set of metrics that you go through and you could be audited for, and anybody could come into the business and do it. So they did this for their business. My client did. Nobody really knows their name outside of their industry, but they got back like really good numbers. Like, so their shipping is, their back orders are like 0.2%.
Sure.
So their inventory turnover is, near perfect.
Yeah.
Just all kinds of metrics. So they were like, their overall score out of 100 was like 99.8. Like it was right up there. Well, that was better than Amazon, Walmart, all that stuff. So that's what I used in a little promotion that we did. We said our shipping standards meet or exceed Amazon, Walmart, some of the big Zappos. I think it was another one we looked at. We just picked some big names that people where they're well known for their shipping practices.
Yeah.
So we compared ourselves, that little company, to these behemoths that are well known for what they do.
Yeah.
So compare doesn't have to be contrast. You could compare yourself favorably to someone else, maybe in another industry that you have a similar metric with.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We, in the composites, you were saying we use a lot of this. I think one of the comparing and contrasting things that we do, like when working with a lot of people that are gravitating towards carbon fiber slowly, the strengths, when you compare it and contrast it to what people have used traditionally, which is metal, steel, and you start looking at ways that you can create a lighter weight, a lighter product than steel, but show the benefits. And a lot of my customers do this, and they're, and they do it actually pretty well too, in terms of visual representations and video, even in a lot of the slides and presentations that they do, but just showing the contrast between steel, traditionally what you've used, and how you can use something like carbon fiber that's a whole lot lighter, and they actually show a lot of demonstrations on the strengths and the I guess what the weight or the amount of weight that you can add into a carbon fiber, whatever you're creating, and add that in compared to steel, and how it holds up, and just the amount of strength that it has. It's people are kind of like, oh, okay, it's
and then then there's all like the ripple benefits of that, of like people having to lift steel compared to carbon fiber, or having to ship it.
Yep.
Or,
and steel is expensive. People, buying steel, especially a lot of steel, we make a lot of it in the U.S., but a lot of it's shipped from overseas. And so when you have obviously tariffs, when you're talking about that, that's a factor in a lot of that. And people start saying, okay, well, that's caused prices to go up from what we were traditionally buying overseas compared to, what you can buy.
You could show the whole supply chain.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to in a presentation about every time somebody touches steel,
right?
There's a real cost there because of the weight. All the different. Every time somebody's touched, maybe two people have to touch it, or you have to have a certain type of machinery to lift it. If it's an I-beam or it's something big that you wouldn't need for composite, and so that all those costs get passed along all the way. Yep. And you could even I could see a cool infographic where you could show how the price goes up and up and up with each one of these.
It does.
These touches. He gave a great example here of contrast for. He's comparing, again, these examples are old if you haven't heard some of our introductions on this book, but this book was written late 60s or 70s, somewhere in there.
Right.
So he says, he's talking about comparing a book club, like the old tape of the month clubs, I guess, or something like that, but a book club to buying individual books, right? Yeah. So he says, while your friends are paying $3.95 for their copies of Frank Yerby's runaway bestseller, The Golden Hawk, Dollar Book Club members were getting the same exact book for only 99 cents. So that's a compare and contrast, right? They're paying $3.95, but because you're a club member, you're only paying 99 cents.
Right.
And a lot of people right now in online marketing could be using something like this, especially ones that have membership sites or they have subscription boxes or things like that. Yeah. You could use a similar type example. One thing that he doesn't talk about it here, but I just picked up on, as a writer, a lot of the examples from this point forward in the body copy, and we're not going to read all of them, but he uses a lot of repetition where he'll say the same phrase 3 times in a row. So he does that little phrase while your friends are paying, $3.95, and then he names the book. Dollar Club members were getting the same book for only 99 cents. He does it again, and then he does it again. And then, so he does it 3 times in a row to get the repetition. It's been said, you probably heard this too, that a lot of times it takes 2 or 3 times for people to hear what you're saying, if you're giving a presentation.
Right.
The first time you say it, it just kind of bypasses the brain.
Sure.
The second time, it's okay, you just said that. Maybe I should listen. The third time, your brain's oh, this must be important because you said it 3 times in a row.
Right.
And so that's another thing I find clients don't like to do. They don't like the exact phrase repetition. They want,
something
they don't mind
fresh.
They don't mind the 3 things in a row a lot of times. A lot of times they don't even notice that, but I write in 3s a lot.
They just don't want to. They want to reword it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't.
So they don't have exact same phrasing 3 times. But I'm telling you, there's something really hypnotic and powerful about using the exact phrase 3 times. And there's a couple other examples that I highlighted in here that I'll point out when we get to them. So compare, contrast, show superiority. Those are all things that you can do on a pretty regular basis. And if you can't do that with your product or service, you might need to go back to the drawing board and re-engineer what you're offering.
Right.
So number 9.
Let's picture the black side, which is the negative of what they have experienced in the past, or here's what you're having to deal with your product over here.
And we went into this in pretty good depth in some of the shows about cults and things that we did in the early episodes. But this is also, there's 2 formulas that are talked about a lot in the world of copywriting. One is PAS, which is problem, agitate, solution. Another is AIDA, which is attention, interest, desire, action. But really, PAS is the one that's the most popular for this type of thing, where you lead with the pain, then you agitate, you turn the knife, and then you offer a solution. Yeah. And a lot of people feel uncomfortable doing that, but it is a very, very powerful way. You don't do it in a mean way or a mean-spirited way, but you just get very honest. And you have to be very in tune with your market to know what their pain is.
Yeah.
So right now I'm working with a client who does helps people with autoimmune disorders, right? So she helps people heal naturally, without medications and all that kind of stuff. But to get there, we have to be really honest about the discomfort, the pain associated with whatever they're going through, whether it's Crohn's or something else.
Sure.
We have to be very... We talk about missing out meals socially with friends, or not being able to eat the same thing your family, or having to cook separate meals for you and your family, and all this stuff. And a lot of the drug commercials, as much as I'm not a fan of drugs, but the drug commercials do a really good job of that.
They do.
They really show the pain of what's going on and how it's affecting your life and all this kind of stuff. And oh wait, all of a sudden it goes from black and white to like full color. Right. Claritin does Claritin ads.
They do.
Every spring. Yeah. They start out with that gray scale. You think it's color, and then all of a sudden they take the Claritin pill and it's like this
everything
bright
clears up and everything's colorful.
Everybody's
and bright.
smiling. The unicorns start flying.
Yep.
It's just amazing. So you don't stay. I think what's important about this section is you don't stay
in the negative. Yeah.
In the black.
Yeah.
You have to transition out into the solution. Like, this is what you're going through. Yeah. This is what you may have experienced, or this is what you could experience if you continue down this path.
I picture the old, like a simple consumer product. Take a garbage bag, for instance. These 3-ply, back in the day when they were marketing these 3-ply Glad garbage bags, they would show the person that's with the other product that's not as strong, and they would be picking it up, and it's like the bottom
goes everywhere,
completely falls out. Yeah. So, I mean, that was just a simple way of picturing. I mean, everybody that watched that commercial could see, holy cow, I am not going to deal with that and getting that mess on my kitchen floor. Forget it. I'm going with something stronger.
Yeah. And that's kind of the flip of the demonstration, right? It's like, it's the black side, as he uses here. It's the dark side of the demonstration. Yep. Let me show you what happens if you don't use our product. Yep. This is what's going to happen. You're going to be on your hands and knees cleaning up, junk. And
like you say, you don't stay there. You just kind of give them that image, and then you move on to, what it can look like. Something that's much better. Yeah.
So that's something that, especially for a business owner or somebody, can be very uncomfortable to do, but it actually serves the client in a really strong way, because it enters the conversation that is already going on in their head. Like, they know they're having these pains and these problems, whether it's accounting software, whether it's car repairs, whether it's weight loss, whatever it is. It's not news to them that they're in pain.
Right.
I mean, so you're not going to like offend them that way.
Sure.
You can step into that, and then you're actually doing them a favor by acknowledging where they're at and then moving into the solution.
Right.
So then the next one is show how easy it is to get these benefits, whatever these benefits are for your. So I underlined a bunch of the benefits that he talks about, like that are what things could you focus on that are easy. Yep. Availability, ease of use, durability, portability, replacement, maintenance. He even says even unwrapping the carton it comes in. Like, Apple does a great job of packaging. And just the packaging experience is like I save Apple boxes
I do too.
Because if I ever have to like ship this or move or whatever, there's no better carton to put this stuff in than the perfectly packed Apple package, And I've noticed a lot more even lower end companies are now spending more money on their boxes and packaging to get that experience.
Makes a huge deal.
Yeah. The whole side story here. There's a whole story about Altoids, the breath mints, and how everything about that is designed to elicit a certain kind of feeling and then justify, the double the price or triple the price of Altoids compared to breath savers.
Yeah.
Because
you literally feel guilty throwing those tins away whenever.
Yeah, and there's a very nostalgic. Because it's an old type thing, but the metal, even the type of paper they picked very intentionally with some test with the crinkle and the sound and folding it back and pulling out one of the tab. But just those little things probably cost them, 20% more than regular packaging.
Right.
Because of the bulk they buy in. But they charge 3 times as much as breath savers or life savers or anybody else, and it's because of that. It's not necessarily how easy it is, but it is that experience, of getting in there. But
My car's littered with a lot of those tins, just because it's like, man, I hate to throw these, but like, what do you do? You just throw them away, throw them in recycling or whatever. But.
Yeah, they make good, like, if you want to put like rare coins. So if you come to rob my house, the Altoid can has the silver in it. So just so you know. So that's, you put it on a shelf and like nobody even deals with it unless the robber feels like he has bad breath and he's going to want to take a mint, and then he finds your stuff. Then it's over.
Completely.
So here's another example. He gives, like, I love this piece of body copy that he talks about here. And again, he does future pacing. Like this is a combination of what we talked about in the previous episode where he puts you in the picture.
Yes.
Of this. So he says, 1 week from today, you're going down to your car, you're going to lift up its hood, you're going to take the black shining can we send you, and you're going to simply pour its contents into the oil filler pipe of your car. So you notice how, like, when he does this, like, he's telling them exactly what they're going to experience. Yeah. Like, he doesn't say you might, you could, you should, if you want to. Like, he's just saying it. Like, It's very bold. It's very, like, this is what you're going to do when you order. And he's assuming that you're going to order the product.
Right.
Assuming the sale. And then it says, that's all the work you will do. That's all the skill you need. And yet in 30 seconds work, you will improve that car's performance in 8 different ways. So, there he's teasing, like, all these benefits you're getting. And then this is where he does the repetition thing again. With just 30 seconds work, you will strengthen the engine of that car so greatly that you'll get 2 to 3 to 5 miles more per gallon from every gallon you buy. With just 30 seconds work, you will lubricate that engine so thoroughly that you will drive up to 5,000 full miles without even looking at your oil. And with just 30 seconds work, you will protect that engine so completely that you will add up to 4 years to its power and life. So he hits that, just 30 seconds of work. Right. So again, remember this little subhead here is about how easy it is to get the benefits. So 30 seconds, you just pour it in, you're done.
Yep.
And he just hits on that over and over and over. I'll tell you who does this better than anybody else is preachers.
Yeah.
Like, if they get a good catchphrase, like, I love, there's a guy named Stephen Furtick. He's over in North Carolina, Elevation Church. He gets on a roll like that, and he'll use those. He'll find a catchphrase that the audience responds to. Right. I don't know if he pre-writes them or if it just happens in the moment. I'm guessing he pre-writes them. But, like, the crowd just gets fired up. He just keeps hitting that same idea over and over and over and over. And it just, you're like, yeah. Like, you really start believing, like this. Where if you just say it once, it's like, okay, that's cool. But as you repeat it, you just start buying in. I guess it's familiarity or something.
Yeah, and showing ease. We talk about, like, people when they know when you make things too complicated for them to, to evaluate. So you've sold them on the benefits, but you've got to sell them on the ease of, getting those benefits, because if it's too complicated or the barrier of entry is too great, then most people will, kind of
that's a great point.
Tune out. I mean,
doesn't matter how good it is. If it's hard, especially these days.
Yeah.
If it's hard and difficult, I mean, there is a subsection of advertising that people respond to that, or a certain market that really responds to the challenge type thing. But yeah, for most people, like, if you say it's going to be really difficult, it scares them off.
Right. And Apple, we talk about Apple a lot. They did a fantastic job of that, back in the early days of their marketing, just showing when you do and we go back to compare and contrast, a Mac and a PC. I mean, some of those ads were great, but talking about just how simple it was. Nowadays, their ads suck. But I mean, it's, back then it was just like, PCs were, for people that weren't as computer savvy, there's some complicated measures there. And when you start talking about performance, all you got to do is just, plug in a Mac, start it up, and you're ready to go.
I remember that specific ad. I remember them doing, like, showing the guy getting a new PC, and he's like 2 days in, and he's his kid's waiting to play,
doing all these updates.
And it's like, and the Mac guy's like, boop.
Yep, it's ready
in the cool ultra modern house.
Oh yeah, with of course, got to have that. Simple.
So then the next thing, number 11, he talks about use a metaphor, analogy, use your imagination. This is one of my favorite techniques, and I think it's just kind of the creative writer in me, is that I love to come up with metaphors and analogies for products or for the process of the product. That's one of my favorite things I like to just kind of brainstorm on and find for people.
Yeah.
Is to come up with these metaphors. And that just takes just some sitting down and really, and if you can't think of it yourself, if you have a salesperson, probably your top salesperson has done that.
Oh, sure.
Because if they're the top salesperson, they have figured out ways to relate to clients using metaphors and analogies.
Right.
But the reason they work so well is because it's just easier to picture. If it's a good metaphor, it's just easy to picture in your mind the language of a metaphor compared to the jargon of your product.
Right.
So one example that comes to mind that's not one of mine is Russell Brunson, founder of ClickFunnels. He talked about when his buddy, and I think it was Prove It, the brand that does the ketones.
Yep.
And they were trying to figure out how to describe ketones, right? Like, what's a ketone? Like, what does it do?
Right.
So Russell came up with the idea that it's like, thousands of little motivational speakers running through your blood and getting you full of energy and things like that. Yeah. So that was his analogy.
Right.
That was easy to understand for people. So in my coaching, I have a daily ritual that I teach my clients to do, and I call it Stoking the Fire. And when I explain it, I talk about it's kind of like when you used to, back in the 1800s, if you had a potbelly stove.
Yep.
Like nothing in the house really worked until you refueled and stoked that fire.
Sure.
The house revolved around the wood-fired stove. Then you could boil the water to make coffee.
Absolutely.
Make breakfast.
Yep.
All these other things. Same's true for, I know you camp and hike a lot. First thing you got to do in the morning is go out and hit those coals and throw some extra wood. And the next thing you know, the whole campsite comes to life.
Yep.
But if you go 2 or 3 days without stoking the fire, you got to start a whole new fire, which is a completely much harder process than if you just do it daily. So that's one of the metaphors I use in my coaching business to get people to do their daily routines and daily rituals.
That's good.
And it's much easier to kind of visualize that.
Yeah.
And everybody's product, I don't care what your product or service is, I guarantee you there is a metaphor or analogy that we could come up with.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you can't figure it out, call me.
Yeah.
Put a comment in the contact
That's where the
form.
copywriter comes out.
Yeah. Just we can work out an arrangement. Go ahead, take number 12.
Moving on. Before you're done, summarize. So you got to summarize at the very end. Kind of, again, most people don't want to rehash or go back over, but it's important to summarize everything that you've kind of bringing everything together of what you've laid out in your copy.
Yeah.
And summarizing that for your reader.
I think there's the people who do this really well are software as a service companies. Yeah. So if you go to their website, they'll take you through their website and it kind of highlights all the different features and benefits.
Yep.
Then you click on the pricing, there's usually a couple tiers.
Yep.
But they bullet point all the different things they've talked about in one sentence. What took, 1 or 2 paragraphs up here.
Yep.
They bullet point into, all the different features and benefits on one nice, neat little area. And it's kind of like the wrap up of the sales letter, whether it's on the same page or a different page. But that's kind of the way I see it in my mind. And even if you're writing copy, it's kind of the order summary. And then a lot of times, so you're just recapping everything they're going to get in shorter sentences usually. And then again, maybe on the order page, you do the same thing with the bullets. Yes, I know I'm getting this.
And a lot of people say that's redundant, and it's not, because any opportunity you have to summarize your benefits, go back over it again before, because, that's at the very end of your copy. That's a perfect opportunity to kind of wrap things up and clarify, let's just so you understand, as we've discussed, here's what you get.
And here's the truth. Like, most people haven't read most of your copy.
Right.
Or listened to most of your presentation.
Some people go straight to the end.
Yeah.
Seriously, I've gotten on, in the past where you can get on online sales letters which you see less and less of now, with so much video. But now, I mean, I would just scroll down to the bottom and say, okay, what do we get? What am I getting? Because I would just sometimes bypass because I was already somewhat pre-sold. I just wanted to see, okay, what's the summary before I make a buying decision.
If you still like it, then you may go back and read and
absolutely
kind of bounce
that
around.
can confirm that. But I wanted to see exactly what I get before I make that final buying decision. So
yep, absolutely. So summarize, and then the next and last thing is, which is also a form of summary, is the guarantee.
Yeah, which I think what's interesting is like some people are afraid to put a guarantee. Mm-hmm. And like, I used to be like, I used to think in terms of like guarantees that it was kind of worrisome that like people actually take advantage. I mean, this was years back in my thinking. And then, one copywriter, I remember explicitly him saying, and you're familiar with Bob Bly, but he said, I rarely have people that take advantage because he puts a guarantee on all his, even a lot of his, Bob Bly is pretty famous copywriter, but he sells a lot of digital products, but he says he puts a guarantee at the end of all of his, even his digital products that say, if you're not happy, I'll give you a refund, and this is something that, it's not like you're going to send it back to me. It's something you've downloaded.
Yeah.
And if you're not happy, I'll still give you a refund. But the interesting thing is, he says like less than 2% that actually take advantage of that or use that, money back guarantee where they want their money back or they're not satisfied.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, Jay Abraham's big on risk reversal or guarantees. And, he's talked about the longer you can make your guarantee and the stronger you can make your guarantee, the less likely people are to actually cash in on it.
And I think what that does is, we've talked about this in the past. That gives people just knowing that gives them the understanding that, I've got that in my back pocket. I've got that. I understand, I can use that, but they rarely do.
Well, I've seen this firsthand. My father-in-law, when I was writing financial newsletters, he was kind of reading them and he would buy some of them.
Right.
And if it had a 30-day return policy, like I was at his house one time, and he's like, should I buy this? I was like, do what you want. Like, if you want to buy it, buy it. If you don't, I don't really care.
Sure.
And he's like, well, I'm going to buy it. It says it's got a 30-day guarantee. And I was like, well, then get it. He's like, do you think they'll give me my money back? I was like, yeah, I work for them. They'll give you your money back. They're paying me every month. They'll give your money back.
Yeah.
But he went to his calendar and he circled on his calendar and wrote on his calendar, guarantee up. So like he knew he had to make a decision the day before whether he was going to keep it or not, And I found that the shorter your guarantee, the more likely people are to think like that, where they have this running clock in their head.
Absolutely.
That says, okay, I've got 30 days to figure this out. Right. Whereas if you put it out and it's a 6-month or year guarantee.
No way.
They're like,
yeah, they forget about it.
I'll go ahead and get it now. It's on sale or whatever. When I get to it, I get to it. But if it's a 30-day clock, like they're just stressing about it.
Right.
Like, I got to check it out. Yep. And if they don't start checking it out immediately or within 2 weeks, then they'll go ahead and get their money back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've also found that, and this is a really good piece of insight here, people are not as concerned about your product or service delivering as they are about themselves taking whatever action is required. There's more doubt about their own ability to dig in and do the work it really depends if it's a product or service, just to continue to, if they buy an exercise piece of equipment, there's
a
real
level
concern,
of guilt.
Yeah. There's like if I want to buy a Bowflex or Peloton bike, my real concern is not that it's going to deliver or not deliver. It's whether or not I'm going to ride it.
Exactly.
Use it.
Because the guilt falls on them. Like, have I really put it to the test, or have I really?
So if I've only got 30 days to try it, and I know I only work out once every 2 weeks, I'm going to have a hard time pulling the trigger. But if you give me a year or a lifetime guarantee, I'm like, well, I'll get around to using it.
Absolutely.
So it's not just your product or service. Sometimes it's the state of mind and how many times the consumer has let themselves down. Mm-hmm. And people don't
because they look
that.
at it and they see a bunch of clothes hanging on it, and they say, you know what? I really haven't
somebody
done...
in their house is like, really? You're going to buy that? So there's a lot of things to consider when you're guaranteed. Now, one of the things I like to do in the guarantee, and he kind of hints at it here, you can re-summarize your summary in the form of a guarantee. So like in here, he says, he's talking about spark plugs again. He says, these plugs must give you up to 9 miles more per gallon instantly or your full purchase price back. These plugs must give you up to 31 more horsepower instantly or your full purchase price back. As an extra added assurance, these plugs must continue to give you this power, performance, and gas savings for 2 full years, or we'll send you a brand new set absolutely free. So his key phrase there was must give you.
Must, yeah.
So he said 3 times, must give you, must give you, must give you. But those are probably the same benefits that were earlier in their copy. And he's just restating them in a way that they got to do this. They've got to do everything I've said that they would do, or you get your money back.
Or, yeah.
I think that's a great way to they
get your money. They'll send them 2 free, 2 additional. So they, on top of that, they're going to ship them out 2 more that, if they don't feel like they fulfill that, then they get 2 additional. Yeah.
So if you think about how just slightly changing the wording of whatever your core benefits were, the core things that they were going to get, you can just say that in their guarantee that if it doesn't do, and some people just kind of gloss over it and they'll say, if this product doesn't do everything we've said it will, well, that's the shortcut and that's the easy way out.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and say it again.
Yeah.
Like if it's 5 or 6 things, just say the 5 or 6 things again. Like it's only going to help your case. It's not going to hurt it.
I agree.
Because some people have already forgotten or they skimmed over that part. They didn't see those things, but they'll read a guarantee pretty close.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because they're looking for the way out.
Yeah.
So if you
always want to see that out.
Yeah. So that's a good thing. So now the last section of this chapter was like, how do you apply these principles not to just one advertisement, but to a series of advertisements that creates a campaign?
Right.
And we were talking before the show, we were talking about a couple of examples, which is you want to keep, so you have a main idea for your ad. You want to keep a similar main idea for the campaign to keep it congruent across time.
Right.
And across exposures. So one that's popular right now is, Geico will, in 15 minutes or less, you can save 20% or whatever it is on your car insurance. Like, I mean, they've done it so much that they make fun of themselves doing
absolutely.
It's like, we know 15 minutes you save
and
money.
People are so used to it, they use it in their everyday jokes. I mean, people, because, and to their advantage, they've done a remarkable job doing that when you can start, using it in your own conversation with somebody else.
Yeah, and, we were talking about previous versions of that where, so easy a caveman could do it.
Right.
And they ran that for a couple of years.
Right, yeah.
And now they're doing the best of campaign as we're recording this, where you can go vote for the best of. Another one that comes to mind is Energizer Bunny.
Yep.
Longest last. They've used that stupid bunny for 30 years now. And
still running.
The executives and the people that, look at the ads and do the average, they're probably just sick and tired of that bunny.
Yeah.
And they want to do something new, but it's like iconic. Like it's just part of who their brand now.
Right. It's like Chick-fil-A and
the
cows.
If you ever kill the bunny, it's like you're basically saying our batteries don't work anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
You almost can't get rid of it. And then Chick-fil-A, the cows, eat more chicken.
Yep.
And so what he's, just like in the ad where you can say the same thing in different ways using different techniques, they're doing the same thing across a campaign.
Yeah.
They're saying the same basic thing, eat more chicken in Chick-fil-A's case. And if you don't have Chick-fil-A where you are, I'm sorry. I know that.
Who doesn't have Chick-fil-A?
Like you go out west, there's just not that many of them. There's just,
it's funny. It reminds me years back when I was doing some career coaching, and we had so I was doing these career coaching, some of these career coaching workshops on basically helping people doing you do more of life coaching, but this is more specifically for a career at the time, and it was under the Dan Miller and his 48 days to the work you love. Yeah. So I was basically doing a lot of I was kind of under his brand because we'd bought into that and using a lot of his principles in doing some coaching. But we had literally had 2 people from California that flew here to Knoxville, for this coaching, this coaching group. And it was like a 2-day group, but they came over here and they were like, where's the Chick-fil-A? Because they didn't have,
well, it's like us when we go to Steak and Shake. Not
exactly.
Steak and Shake, the In-N-Out.
Yep, In-N-Out
right?
burger. Yeah.
Like if you're from the East and you go West, you got to try In-N-Out burger. If you're from the West, you come East, you got to try Chick-fil-A.
Yep.
It's just a rite of passage.
Yeah, In-N-Out, man. It's good stuff. But
my daughter is just crazy about In-N-Out.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I think it's okay.
It's great.
Sorry.
To me,
that may crash our, we may get
I'm
a lot
still
of
a
comments.
Five Guys fan.
When I was in the military in Fort Myer, Virginia, in 92 through 95, it's where the first 2 Five Guys were. Mm-hmm. There's one in Alexandria, one in Arlington. We used to go there, 2 or 3 times a week at least. Yeah. But we were so broke because we were all privates in the Army that we would just get the fries, like a large fry, and split it because a large fry feeds like 6 people.
Oh, sure.
And get one Cajun fry.
They give you a bag
fry.
just soaking in grease with nothing but like fry. You have to dig for your burger in that.
And
bag.
And the guy that had the car, we had this thing: you fly, I buy.
Yeah.
So like, not everybody had a car because this was like the 90s, and in the military. So I had a car, so like I always got my fries free because I would drive and they would pay for stuff. That was a good deal. So, but we wandered a little bit there. Food must be dinner time.
Yeah, getting hungry.
So that is chapter 7.
Yep.
And we're going to jump to a different book for one episode. We'll hit this book a few times over the next 5 or 6 episodes.
Right.
But it's a really cool little book called
Words That Change.
Words That Change Minds. And it's got some neat little things if you're in sales. Even if you're just in the business, if you have people that report to you and you need to influence people or understand why people do the things they do. We're going to be talking about that in episode 22. So
fantastic.
We'll hit 2 or 3 word pairs, depending on how long it takes us to go through them.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about why they change minds and how to spot it in different types of people. So that'll be fun.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Again, persuasionbythepint.com. Check us out. Follow us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, whatever podcast platform that you typically use. And hey, while you're at it, give us a 5-star rating. We'd love to hear some comments too. You can go over to persuasionbythepint.com, click on the contact, or just email us at persuasionbythepint@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.